This is the Jay Pitt Show.
I wanted to bring up something I texted you about while you were on the trip.
Yeah.
It was a lot of stuff that Trump said. I'm just going to read a few tweets that are quotes from his press conference. It says, President Trump says he wants to drive housing prices up for people who own their homes. People that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. We're not going to destroy the value of their homes so that somebody who didn't work very hard can buy a home. I mean, I guess I can agree with like the first part. You don't want to destroy people's values of their homes. I think saying people who didn't work very hard, I think that part is a little condescending. I mean, we've seen housing prices rise incredibly fast and wages not meet that.
I have lots of opinions, but
then,
go ahead.
Another one from Trump says, when you make it too easy and cheap to build houses, house prices come down. I don't want to do that. To me, that's the biggest misquote, or not misquote, but the worst thing he said from this entire thing. The way you bring the market into equilibrium, we've talked about time and time again, the only way to do it is by creating more inventory, and the only way to truly create more inventory is to build more houses. And if you want people to build more houses, you need to deregulate and make it cheaper for them to build houses. And that quote from him is completely going against everything we've said for the past 4 years. And 2 years we've been doing this podcast. I think that's completely misaligned and very short thinking on his part.
Well, it's interesting though. Okay, so the 3 quotes you sent me, and I didn't watch the presser, so I don't know what the actual quotes are. I will say there's a quote here from Peter Schiff that I think is a slight mischaracterization. Okay, he says Trump wants to make the housing bubble bigger. That's not what he said. Okay. He also didn't say he wants to make houses more expensive. He said he doesn't want to harm the value of homes. I'm not defending him. Okay. Here's what I think. I think Trump is ridiculous and says things without fully understanding them, and creates a lot of issues for himself and a lot of people by the way he speaks. It's the way he's been since he's been in office. It was probably who he was. I watched him on TV and knew who he was before, but it's probably how he's always been. He flies by the seat of his pants and says things that aren't necessarily true. And there's a lot of mischaracterization, but misattributing the things he does say doesn't help either. And I think that's what Schiff is doing in that situation. I think protecting values is probably a decent idea. I think stuffing the genie back in the bottle by trying to make prices go down is not the answer. Okay. I think we need to find equilibrium. I am perfectly okay with slow growth, slow value growth, slow property appreciation. Okay. To kind of right the ship, if you will, because 13% ain't it that we got from 21 to 22. That's not what we need. Somewhere between 4 and 8% is probably healthy. Okay. And wages are a whole different issue. It's above my pay grade to discuss what it takes to increase real wages. Okay. What I understand is housing, and you're absolutely right. If he is an advocate of, and it seems to say that here, okay, if he's an advocate, this is according to Unusual Whales, which is an account on Twitter or X that seems to have pretty decent stuff most of the time. The quote from Pop Base that is here that says, people that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. I don't think that means drive those prices up. I think that means keep them from going down. We're going to not destroy the value of their homes. I'm okay with that. So that somebody who didn't work very hard can buy a home. That's bullshit. That's condescending, exactly like you said. And this is the trap that I think he falls into. Even when there are decent things that the man does, he clouds it and puts a negative spin on it because of the way he talks to people. And nobody deserves that. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay. So if he's against helping inventory reach an equilibrium. Look, you can just look at supply and demand. Guys, this is 101 economics. Economics 101. There's an X and a Y axis. Okay? You have a graph, one that represents supply, one that represents demand. Where they cross is where we want to be. Okay? We want supply to meet demand. We can do that at that X, at that intersection. There is efficiency. Okay? There is, an appropriate of opportunity for growth. There is not deflation or reduction in prices that will hurt current homeowners. That we want the intersection. And right now we can't reach the intersection because there are barriers to creating inventory, regulation, ability to borrow, cost of labor, things like that. And we ought to be helping people create inventory because that's how you slow growth. Right, is provide the appropriate amount of adequate inventory. You're right. It's what we've been saying. And I just think there's opportunities for us to improve as a nation, and our leadership class, whether it be right or left, can't get out of its own way long enough to let the world heal. And that is as much about politics as I'll ever say on this show. I'm not a fan of any of it, right? I know real estate. You know real estate. We talk about it all the time. Like, okay, so we don't want to destroy values. I get that. But why do we got to bring how hard people work? I mean, there's plenty of people that don't work very hard that already own homes. Yeah. Okay, and there's plenty of hardworking people that can't afford it yet. Right? But making these broad, sweeping value judgments about people's character is complete horseshit.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like aside from mortgage rates, which does have a direct effect on the housing market, aside from that, the housing market doesn't need protection from anybody. It stood the test of time.
No.
There's no protection in anything he can do to keep homeowners wealthy, aside from like mortgage rates, which he's not supposed to have any control over, but sounds like he's trying to get control over.
Well, I mean, what's interesting, and this is probably a topic for conversation in a later podcast when I've had a little more time to look in it. But, he essentially released or floated a name for consideration and vetting for the next Fed chair. Kevin Warsh is the man's name. And he's got some interesting ideas. Now, I don't know how to square them. And again, this is above my pay grade. But some things I've read about Kevin Warsh is he's got some unique policy differences from a lot of former Fed chairs. And if you look at it, like, Greenspan, Bernanke, and, up to current, they've all kind of followed the same kind of policy type ideas. Raising and lowering the federal funds rate as a check on liquidity, right? And how much money is in the system. Warsh has been quoted as saying that by keeping the federal funds rate high, we've incentivized banks to keep capital on the sideline because they're making 5%, 6%, 7% in keeping their money parked at the Fed rather than incentivizing businesses to go out and grow the economy. Very interesting. He's also critiqued artificially lowering the federal funds rate as a means for stimulating the economy because he believes it to be inflationary. So it seems like he's going to go about, and I think that's what you're seeing with the big bond purchase that was just made. The idea that we can reduce consumer interest rates through other mechanisms rather than manipulating the federal funds rate. I'm all for new, fresh ideas. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out once he's confirmed. If he kind of takes a different tact, because essentially what his argument is that we've given not just a bailout, but an incentive to the big banks to keep all their money at the Fed returning 6%, which is better than they can find in the market with virtually no risk.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be bailing out big banks either, right? I want small businesses and middle income individuals and people that have a leg up. That's what our country is about. So I don't know. Interesting thoughts. I'm sure Trump will come out and say something stupid to ruin it. But, I don't know. It's wild times we live in.
Yeah. Just thought it was a good talking point at Senate last week, and figure we talk about it.
We talk. I mean, if I hate it. I mean, he probably did say those things, but I have very little trust for the people quoting him too. So it's like, I don't know. And I'm probably not going to take the time to go read the damn transcript of what exact words came out of his mouth. If I can watch a video that says, and I feel relatively certain it's not AI and he's actually saying those things, but I didn't see it. So, if he says that we should allow inventory to remain constrained, I think that's stupid.